So I'm going to go through a presentation of the South Kalispell Urban Renewal District. The project's been about a year in the making, and at the end of that we'll do questions and answers so we can pop back to the slides if need be. The purpose of this, my name's Wayne Freeman. I am principal with CTA Architects Engineers. Contrary to that shown, I think, by one of the papers, we're not an out-of-town firm. I actually live out of town, but we have an office here in downtown. But we're parts of the planning group with CTA. So Stephanie is in our Livingston office. I'm in our Bozeman and Regina, Saskatchewan office. The purpose of this overall plan, we were hired along with our subconsultant Mead and Hunt about a year ago, and this product and project was initially developed as the catalyst of that. Obviously, was what to do with the airport. What do we do with the Kalispell General Aviation Airport? But it's much broader than that. The overall project is a much greater area, so it's a part of the urban renewal plan for the south part of Kalispell. We spent an incredible amount of time early on over the spring and early summer doing a number of community engagement processes, and that is working through. We have a website still active. The website's still active. We did a survey. We've met with a number of groups and constituents within the city. Met with a lot of leaders. Met with the FAA. Met with other, the Glacier International Airport, and just talked to a lot of people. We also had a number of work sessions with the general public and opportunities for everyone to come in. I see many familiar faces out here, so a lot of you have been a part of driving what we've generated here at for the South Kalispell Urban Renewal District. Just as a reminder, this is a 720-acre project. Looking at an overall planning of what to do with the 720-acre core area in the south of Kalispell. 450 parcels, 36% of it public, about a third of it commercial, and then the rest residential or vacant. There's an existing TIF district within the area as a part of that area. There's 230 acres. There's a map over here that kind of shows where that is defined. Approximately 103 owners within that area, and the city is the largest owner within that general area. 71 acres of the airport area is a part of the TIF district. Again, talking about the public engagement process, this just gives you a little bit of information about what we did during the course of that. When we were hired, we were tasked to really spend some time boots on the ground and getting folks involved, getting opinions and listening to that. Some of those opinions, some of those emerging trends that we heard consistently was Kalispell needs a dog park, and this would be a great area for a dog park. You're an outdoor community, so trails are very important to you. Let's expand our trail system. A real community park in the southern portion of Kalispell is also important. And then other options were mixed-use housing, preserving agriculture. But we did hear a consistent theme about the airport, and that was folks generally were somewhat ambivalent about the airport, didn't know a lot of it. It's not used by a whole lot of people, but generally they felt like they wanted to keep it. So those were the things that we tended to hear. As a part of what drove that public participation process, we came up with 10 catalyst projects, 10 catalyst projects that would take that public information and what we heard through talking with city staff and the general public, and came up with this list. I won't go through the list here because I'm going to go in detail of each one. So this is how that plays out. There also is a board here that shows that. So there's 10 different within the overall area in the South Kalispell area. There's 10 improvement projects that we saw as real catalyst projects. The first being a fairly expensive project, and that's looking at Cemetery Road. Cemetery Road's currently a rural profile road, but it's very busy road. And so we recommended that road go to an urban profile at a bridge over Willow Creek. Look at taking that, and it's slated in the future as a minor arterial within the city of Kalispell. You can look at the key map there. It's a very prominent east-west corridor that is a part of the southern boundary, if you will. You can look at and see the location of the ring road, the southern portion of the new ring road. Actually, that's during our last meeting we pointed out that that's probably actually part of the reason why that Cemetery Road is becoming so busy. So we felt that that's a need to have improvement. And within the, I'll point out, we've identified and we've put costs in dollars to that. It's very detailed within the plan, but again, this is a executive summary proposal or presentation tonight. You all know that there's a new elementary school that's planned for that south area here. This is not the design of it, but it's a theoretical conceptual plan of that location, again on the west side of that. Talked about a dog park. In this case, this image and then the following image, we see a dog park as an integral piece to what could become a new community park. And this is a concept where we took a lot of the thoughts that we heard and a lot of the comments that we heard from the general public to include within this community park, something like a concert area, a amphitheater area, again looking at options for soccer fields and football fields, maybe a new community center in that area. But so we've identified a cost for that and how that might play out in the south portion of Kalispell. Trails, I mentioned, is very important to you all. We hear that over and over again. Highway 93 has got an implementation program as development occurs, landowners build the trail in front of their roadway. And we see that really as kind of a piecemeal option and think that maybe a better use of that is let's do the thing all at once. Let's build a linkage trail that not only is a recreational trail, but an alternative transportation mode that takes people from the southern portion of Kalispell and then links it to the downtown area. Key, I think, is an entry feature to the city of Kalispell from the south. We did not design this image here. This was designed by another project. But we see a new gateway as really being key. When I drive in, and just about every time I come into Kalispell, I'll come in from the south, and you never know when you're getting there. It's kind of a no man's land. So I think, having a gateway is important. Here's an image of a potential gateway. The other thing we heard about was opportunities for commercial and light industrial development. As you head around Flathead County, you see a lot of sporadic light industrial. We see this as an opportunity for catalyst projects that maybe a new business park within the south area that's more defined and more refined rather than sporadic that just occurs along the highway. So we've got options for that, as well as if the airport were to remain, there's a key opportunity for a new entry to the airport. And in doing that, this is actually located on private land, but we see it as an opportunity for an aviation-oriented business park that caters to the aviation needs. As I mentioned, part of that is the airport's kind of tucked in there. It's if you're not from Kalispell, you don't necessarily know that it's there until you see a plane fly out. So it's a little hidden, and maybe opening that up would also embrace the condition of flying and the fact that there is an airport there. Located there to the southwest is also an opportunity for a park and ride, or a location for area where people could do park and trailhead for the trail system throughout the area. We also, I didn't mention it up, we would consider having a trail system along the Cemetery Road that connected east to west and then tied into Highway 93. And then one of the other development options within the city is the city actually owns within the central core in that in the next slide. The city owns this land that's in kind of the heart of the downtown South Kalispell area. We see an opportunity with these two to relocate those city shops, move those shops out of the downtown area, move them onto the more industrial character of the existing airport ground, and then replicating and reusing that land, maybe going out and selling the property, encouraging some urban development that might have mixed use tenants in it. For instance, we were thinking that the area might be developed with live-work components, where you have commercial development on the first floor, yet apartments and condominiums above. So this is a concept and a reuse of basically an adaptive reuse of that existing ground, and maybe giving a better land use for that valuable urban core area. This is an example. This shows the cost estimates of the product. You can see there's a $61 million cost to just those projects. Some of them are driven by private development. Some of them are driven by public investment. And along that line, we also pointed out here's a laundry list of potential funding options. Many of those projects could be funded using the existing TIF funding, industrial development bonds, general obligation bonds. Of course, a lot of those lands are on private ground, so private financing would be there. But there's also the opportunity for public-private partnerships in some of these. And again, we're throwing out concepts that we saw, that you told us about, that we listened to, and then we saw opportunities to within that core area to make those happen. So again, this is a list of the variety of potential funding sources. With that, we get to the heart of the matter, and that is what to do with the airport. So we've spent an incredible amount of time looking at and trying to evaluate what's been done in the past, because there's obviously been a lot of work that's been done prior to this in trying to determine what to do and how to improve the existing airport. So planning, again, started back in 1979 in current planning of what to do with this airport. There's been 6 major significant planning efforts that's gone on since then, and those include developing guidelines, recommendations for future growth, what to do about operation and maintenance of the airport, and then how do you develop the airport. The last and most obvious item was the 2012 plan that was created as an airport master plan an environmental assessment that ultimately arrived at the idea that the city would accept FAA funding, reorient from the 1331 orientation of the runway, extend the runway, and you all know where that went. So those previous plans, consistent with the need for capital reinvestment, the city really hasn't invested a lot in the airport over the last many years. But operating at a cost currently that's prohibitive to the city budget. The city spends a lot of money every year maintaining that existing and operating the existing airport. All of this, and I won't go into all of the details, particularly the cost. We did cost analysis and looked at the options that we heard through the various interviews with folks and came up with 5 basic alternatives. The first 3 have financial impacts associated with them. The last 2 are more theoretical and operational oriented. But I'd like to go through each and every one of those here and show if those were chose by the city council, how those would actually be implemented. So the first is keep the airport operating as a city airport and keep funding it through basic city revenue bonds, basically operating it through the general revenue funds. Second, I'll get to that, Mary. Yeah. So the second option is close the airport. The third option is request FAA funding for the airport in its current alignment. Now let me stop there. There was an article, I think, in the Interlake that kind of noted that we would go back to the FAA funding and go back to that same plan. That's not what we're proposing. What we're proposing under this scenario is utilizing FAA funding in its current location with minimal adjustments that brought it up to existing standards, but kept the 1331 orientation, did not extend the runway, but did relocate the taxiway. Fourth item is incorporation into an airport authority, and I'll get to that as to what that means. And then the last option is privatize the airport. I want to point out that every one of these options require some level of financial commitment by the city, some level of option for the city to consider, but some of them are more than others. So in getting into alternative 1, keep the airport as is. In this scenario, we complete the upgrades to the airport that are consistent with the city's existing capital improvement plan. What that means is that replacing the taxiway, the east-west taxiways. Note all costs here are burdened by the city. This would come from the city. If the city kept operating it as is, they're going to keep paying for it. There is an option in options 1 and 3 to have new income come through, and that's in the form of a new hangar, T-box hangars, that would come to play via private development. We would go out, we would have private development come in, and we would utilize a land lease to that private development. And in option 1 and in option 3, we both of those options utilize that as an income producing basis. In this case, the bottom line is the airport experiences significant cash shortfalls over the 5-year period that we looked at this. And we'll show the dollars here when we get towards the end. An action plan, if the city were to go there, these are the items that we would recommend that they go forward. Invest in the east and west taxiway maintenance projects. Those are overlays largely, and the city would hire a full-time airport manager try to attract the private development for the T and box hangar projects. There would need to be a land use development plan created for those vacant tracts of land that are associated with the airport. Also, I think it's very important that you would engage in a public publicity campaign that would basically let the people know how the city is going to continue to use this money. City is going to continue in this scenario to spend several $100,000, and the annual outlay of the city is pretty substantial under this. And then as funds are available, strive to meet some of those FAA standards. They're there for a reason, and while this doesn't use FAA funding, we would encourage that FAA standards try to be met over the course of the long haul. Alternative 2 is close the airport. And in that situation, this allows for private and public development to occur after the airport is closed. It's got a significant amount of upfront cost to closure. Part of that cost, we're showing $2.9 million as a part of this cost, and those costs are largely dealing with the existing hangar lease buyouts. Those are significant. Some of them have 15 years left on them. All of them require some level of appraisal if the airport were to close, as to what the valuation the city would owe the individual landowner. Some of them require 2 appraisals. So it's not an easy thing to do to just shut the airport down. The other cost would be associated with removing the runway. So an action plan, first and foremost, consult legal counsel on the best path forward for closeout and the lease buyouts. The idea here is plan for a date in the future when the city would no longer offer aviation at the airport. So in essence, set a date in the future, whatever that is, and go forward with initiating a staged closeout of the airport. Again, begin a conversation and dialogue with leaseholders that this is what the city has decided. We're going to end up buying out the lease or closing this, so there's got to be lease appraisals and then a lease buyout process. Then you've got, what do you do with the land? After you've advertised that closure date along the FAA channels to all pilots, giving everybody an opportunity to relocate, close the airport, demo the runway, and sell or lease the project. We looked at what happens if we sell this thing? What happens if we close the airport and sell it? There's a couple of options out here, and actually there's probably any number of options and any number of things that could be done. We looked at a couple of them. One was more of a public use, public future land use, and this is one option just from a land use planning perspective, what could be done here. And in this case, we've said, what about relocating or utilizing, the county utilizing this land for a portion or all of the fairgrounds. Now, the fairgrounds manager is here tonight, and looking at that as an option. It's important to note that fairgrounds and the county has spent a considerable amount of money of late at the existing fairgrounds location. But there could be a duplicate use of this through creation of a south high school for the city of Kalispell. The land is there, it's available, and there's opportunities for joint use of that. A second alternative is looking at this in more of a public or private land sale of what this could be, and we're just citing that in most of this area, we would have some level of commercial or residential activity. But there's 72 acres out there. The other thing that's important to note, there's 72 acres that has a considerable amount of underground, significant mainline infrastructure. So that, if you look at that from a development standpoint, that's a fairly good thing, because that's an existing cost that all too many times, if you're developing land, is not an option. You've got to bring that in. Here, a lot of that exists to some extent. It's all in how you develop it. So there are a lot of options for that. Mentioned in options 1 and 3, the idea that one of the income producing elements, one of the few income producing elements that's available to using this as an airport, is a tee and box hangar. This is I think a 22 unit tee hangar complex, and where it would be located. So we're just showing where that would occur. So I mentioned alternative 3, and this is where a lot of the confusion has taken place. Using FAA funds, you all know the FAA funding in the previous location, or in the previous effort, was voted down. And there was a ballot issue that the citizens of Kalispell voted down not to accept FAA funding to do that project. The city could go back, re-engage the FAA, and in this case, not looking to expand the airport, not lengthening the runway, not reorient it from 1331, but to take and look at that airport. Would the FAA be willing to spend and invest in the condition of how the airport is currently aligned? These are some of the factors that go into to having this, but the one item that's always of important is the last item. The use of FAA funding requires a 20-year commitment to airport operations. So if you accepted FAA funding in 2017, 20 years later, and then did nothing else, you have to keep those operations going for another 20 years. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, obviously. Action plan for that alternative 3. The city representatives organize, attend a meeting with FAA representatives to discuss potential for the project. We have talked with FAA, and in fact, this is something that the city would have to step forward and initiate and engage with them. I don't believe that the individuals that we've spoken with have ever been in a position where they worked with a community and then the community did not want to take FAA funds, and then that same community come back. So it's a new thing, but it's not. It has not been shut down at all. They would consider having a discussion with the city again if the city elected to do that under this downsized alternative. With the FAA agreement, prepare an airport layout plan, and with capital improvement plans, there are some things that have to be done, and that is the key is distance between the taxiway and the runway, and then obviously coordinate on timing. Alternative 4, there are 4 airports that are currently operated by Flathead Municipal Airport Authority, one of which is the Glacier Airport. The option of taking the operations of the airport out of the hands of the city of Kalispell, yet seeing the need and utilizing and keeping this airport open, is an option. 39%, in fact, 39% of the airports, the GA airports across the nation, are operated under an airport authority operation. And we've listed the various advantages, pros and cons of the airport authority operations. So If the city decided that it wanted to explore alternative operations, that it felt that the airport was still necessary to be there, it could be transferred out of ownership of the city into an airport authority. Likewise, the last opportunity that our alternative that we've set forward and noted herein is the privatization of the airport. Most airports are owned in some fashion by a governmental entity. Most of the main GA airports are. There's a lot of private airports that are, two and three individuals involved in a grass runway or whatever. But this size of an airport, it's not typical that it would be privatized. But again, if the city decided that at this time they did not want to continue to put public dollars into operation of a general aviation airport, a privatization or an option to go forward with a development RFP would be an option. And how that might take place is the city decides that, okay, we're going to either do something with the airport or close it, but what we'd like to do is explore first any interest by private entities or the Flathead Municipal Airport Authority or some other airport authority that might want to take over or be created as a part of that. Give a period of time to private development interests that might come forward with a proposal to continue to operate that as an airport. And the city would set forth those basic limits of, one, maybe how long it's operated, how much they take on as a risk or eliminate themselves as a risk, as well as maybe what the value of that would be. So privatizing the airport is a real opportunity. Again, if the city feels that an airport is still viable, but they don't want to run it. So you ask about dollars. The report, I would encourage you to dive into the details of the report. If you have real concern about that, it's I would say it's a long read because we tried to spend as much time looking at what the dollar values would be under each condition. So in the first three alternatives, again, alternative 1, keep it as is, alternative 2, close the airport, and alternative 3, as a utilizing airport funding. This is the Cliff Notes version of what that boils down to. In alternative 1, you are continuing to lose money. There's from a 5-year cash flow perspective, there's $1 million lost. The initial cost to that is $900,000, and there's a lot of things that are involved in that. Ongoing annual costs, because it's not an income in this condition, is $300,000. If you look back at what we recommended, hire an airport manager, there's a cost associated with that, as well as improvements in some of the maintenance items for the runway. All the way over to the right, the drawbacks, those maintenance items are not eligible for TIF funding. So you can't utilize the existing TIF funding that's out there to do airport runway overlay. So in this case, you're just keeping it alive. You're keeping the opportunity of continuing the airport operation, and that is the cost. Alternative 2 has a high upfront cost. We've calculated it to be just less than $3 million of upfront cost, and those include largely the lease buyouts of the hangars, as well as the demolition of the runway. There's a cash flow. It does end up actually cashing out if you sold the land. We've valued the land just across the board at $25,000 an acre in this scheme, but we also say, obviously, you're going to go out and get appraisals for each and every parcel that you might consider selling. In alternative 2 for closure, you can use TIF funds to do a majority of the closure operations, the demolition of the runway and the like. There is a potential for the city to make a profit. We did not try to calculate if there are new developments, there are new commercial developments out there. Obviously, there's potential tax income to the city. There's also esoteric, ongoing potential new jobs that might be associated with whatever private development that occur. We did not make an attempt to try to put dollars or numbers to that. And then alternative 3 actually shows the initial cost to the airport is $400,000 in cost of bringing that west taxiway in line. But then there's an ongoing income in this case of $400,000 a year, at least projected over the 5-year period of time that we've looked at. Tom made it a point in our last presentation that those costs don't stop at the end of the 5 years. Those costs, not only in alternative 1, but alternative 3 as well, those costs are continuing on down the line. So those are things to consider. The thing that strikes me about this is there's no real huge differentiation between one or the other. You would think that by selling the property, there's a big difference in the cost or the amount of income. Well, actually, the difference really is the ongoing maintenance costs. So, because theoretically, you've gotten rid of that property, but because of that high $3 million, almost $3 million upfront cost, it really takes a lot of that value out of the alternative 2, alternative 2. So with that is in a nutshell the gist of the report. Again, it takes on a lot of things. We've looked at a lot of different things, but again, the airport is central to what we were hired to do. And let's go ahead and turn on the lights. And with that, I guess I would entertain questions and do my best to try and answer them.
I did want to just let you know, as you sit and formulate some questions, this is like the start thinking process, but where this goes from tonight, this isn't the public hearing on this plan tonight. This is the first presentation as the plan goes out.
Yes.
The question is FAA money available for maintenance?
Yeah, my question is whether FAA money is being absorbed into the city for maintenance and operation of the airport now, and if we upgraded it, would it be available to have money on an annual basis to maintain and to manage the airport?
You want to answer that?
So FAA money is for capital reinvestment projects, not like reconstruction type projects, not overlay, and not general operation and maintenance. So general operation and maintenance funds would still be the responsibility.
We're not currently using FAA funding for anything.
Okay, so if the city was to get FAA funding, we'd still be on the hook for plowing it, mowing the grass, taking care of the maintenance.
Yes.
One thing about the FAA pertaining to maintenance, of course, it's non-existent. They go for improvements and programming to work with land acquisition if the need for safety or expansion of the facility. The other thing is that you have to kind of watch yourself on is the privatization of a key hangar operation on the airport. That's tough to deal with because the FAA would look at that as through the fence possibilities. So when you do get to the point of where if you do want to do that, you're going to have to really sit down with the FAA and kind of get a better idea of which direction that you really want to go if that's something that you want to deal with. One of the other things that you have to also look at is the GA programming across the country has taken a recession, as you might say. We don't know what, of course, will happen with the way fuel prices are. You don't know how long that's going to last, but GA aircraft programming in that for this type of airport is it's not increasing, it's decreasing. So you have to look at that too, as a spectrum of the use of the airport, if it's really going to be a viable entity and be supported by the city as well as getting the FAA involved. The FAA to get involved with your existing facility, again, is going to have to be where they're going to have to do a waiver on that. Nowadays, the FAA does not like to do waivers on facilities. So that's another thing that you sit down and talk to too, if that's the direction that you want to go with.
I have a couple of questions. One, can you explain the lifespan of the TIF district and the amount of funds that are being generated by that? I assume if there was additional development, we'd see an increase. And then secondly, under Alternative 3, you've said a couple of times that the goal would be to ultimately meet FAA standards. Wouldn't that then imply extending the runway? Or is Alternative 3 consistent with staying within the footprint of the existing airport?
Answer that one first. The Alternative 3 stays within the existing footprint of the runway. The airport or the taxiway would have to move. That's one of the critical items. The taxiway is too close to the runway. The first question is there's on the TIF district, it expires in July 1st, 2020. Roughly $3 million projected at that point it would be available in the coffer, and then would sunset, go away if you didn't use it.
And so again, on the taxiway, that would be outside of the footprint of the existing airport?
It would be outside of the footprint of the existing west taxiway. So it would just move over.
So it would stay within the foot?
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty close, but it still needs to be relocated.
So my understanding is that the plan as it exists right now considers that the future of general aviation will continue the direction, the decline that it has, and that the study has not considered the impact of potentially profound technological change in considering these options as of yet.
Correct.
I'd hope to introduce the topic that smart plane technology involving a 10x reduction in fundamental costs has arrived, and we'll start to see commercialization efforts, actually have started to see commercialization efforts that will bear fruit in the future. These things speak directly to the ability for Kalispell residents to come and go at will, and for people who want to operate, live elsewhere, or work elsewhere to commute at will from small regional airports and small city airports.
Any other questions?
You may have mentioned it, but in the privatization option, did you say how much the city would get paid for the airport and how that would affect the city's financial situation?
I did not say that. In the layout, basically the way we would see this happening is the city would issue an RFP, a request for proposals, give adequate period of time for a team or an individual to put together financing or a proposal package, and then the city would evaluate that. Whether or not the city would gain any money whatsoever, I don't know, but the city would probably want to set forth a minimum threshold. I don't know what that dollar figure would be. That's more of a political decision that needs to be made by the city council if they decide to go forward with that. But the option is to eliminate the city's responsibility for the operation of an airport. The city could put into those offerings a reversionary clause if whoever they sold it to or gifted the property to. If they didn't operate it up to standards, it would revert back to the city. All kinds of things would be included. The idea is conceptual in nature at this point, and we would set forth just a list of recommendations as to how that might take place if the city opted to ask for proposals from outside interest to operate the airport, or even to change the use.
When you were talking about number 3, where the FAA would possibly do some funding in its footprint as it is now, I've been involved with the FAA in this issue for many years, and it was really jammed down our throats when they wanted to expand it that they would not give us any money whatsoever if it was in the same footprint. We were told by Gary Gates that it would have to be expanded to 3,900 feet or 42. We were told, and that's why I'm really concerned about this, is we were told there's no way. We asked them at that time, can we get some funding just to fix it up the way it is right now, where it's at? We were told no numerous times. So I would like to hopefully maybe see that number 3 proposal given to FAA and get some real speaking back, or answers back from them. Would that be possible?
I want to say knock yourself out, but the fact of the matter is we've talked to we initially early on, and this is a very unique situation. You have to. I think the FAA was a little bit floored, taken back that the city decided not to execute that option because the citizenry voted it down. If the city were to re-engage, I think they would listen, but I'm not going to tell you what they could do. We're putting it forward as an option that the minimal level of items would have to adjust, and one is moving the runway. The taxiway, not the runway, and not extending the runway. I obviously wasn't a part of those discussions early on. All I can tell you is that our consultants met and talked with FAA, and that was what we have come back with. Now, the city would have to re-engage those discussions and go with it at that point. We're just identifying that is a potential option.
Yeah, I understand that, and we did that numerous times when it was up here, that we asked them, well, they said, we said, can we just get the money for that? And they totally refused.
Yeah, I don't know how you phrase the question, or I don't know, again,
what
obviously I wasn't a part of that. All I'm telling you is that we see that as an option at this point. As far as we know, that's a potential option for the city to re-engage under, with minor adjustments, with limited level of adjustments, the existing orientation of the 1331 orientation of the runway.
I understand. But my other question also was on number 2, closing it. I see that we're, $2.9 million to buy out, possibly sell $2.9 million worth of property. What would, if we sold that, was there any figures at all that would come back into the coffers of the city? On taxes? I suppose that would probably depend on the size of buildings.
And again, as I indicated before, we didn't try to explore what could be done. I mean, that was well outside the scope of our services to do a market feasibility assessment as to what would best take place, whether or not it be 20% commercial or whatever. That would need to be done. We've set forth those as recommendations as to if you chose to close it, this is what you should do. You should go forward. You do a market feasibility assessment, figure out what the items are, on top of figuring out and doing appraisals for every one of those leases that sit out there. So if you choose to close the airport, there's a lot of items that need to take place in order to do that.
And if it was accomplished, then the taxpayers we would be able to redeem some of that income by taxing.
By taxing future development?
Yes.
Of course you would.
Okay, that's all.
So this is all nice and rosy, and you have 5 options on the table, but the bottom line is, how is this going to get decided? Does the city just make some random swipe of the pen and say this is how it's going to be, or do they put it to a vote of the people, or how long is this going to go on for?
That's more in your line, Tom.
You know, as I said before, there's a couple advisory committees that will be holding workshops, working their way through. They'll make a recommendation. An Urban Renewal Agency, the Kalispell Planning Board. Ultimately, it does go to City Council, and ultimately the City Council makes a decision. Now, they can choose to make that decision several different ways, but it is the bailiwick of the City Council to function, to adopt the plan, to suggest a recommendation, and to move forward. So we live in a republic, and we have a council that moves forward with that. So I expect that to happen. I don't control their schedule, but in 2 to 3 months, it'll mean 2 months it'll be in front of them, and in 3 months, 4 months, how long it takes to make a decision.
It's a complicated decision, and I know that there's pretty heartfelt, everybody's on a different side on it, so.
Fully understand that, and one of the reasons of undertaking this study was to help create some paths to proceed. And as you heard tonight, an option could be taken. The council could vote on an option and move forward and take that with all due, concern to fulfill it. And 6 months later find out that it's not going to work. You step back and you go another option or another option. Some of these options require significantly more research to follow up on. It's a complicated process of looking at what to do with the airport. So, we'll follow through, keep following through.
On page 18 of the report, you list 4 different airports that have Runway, a similar situation. Kalispell, I'm just wondering, like Polson, how do they finance their airport? Have you looked at any of those?
FAA funding?
They go into discretionary with the state and so on. The Division of Aeronautics also helps them with some improvements to that, also to help with their share of the funding that would be coming from the FAA.
So the question was, how is Polson financed, and to a degree they receive FAA assistance and other programs?
Is their airport the same size as ours, or is it smaller?
I can't answer that question.
Pretty close to the same size. They're with compliance of what the FAA requires for the airport to work safely. The biggest problem you have here is that you're out of compliance, and the FAA to come in and put money down with having to put in a waiver, as you've seen in your master plan, and that is almost non-existent nowadays, just because of the liability factor of being out of compliance, and something happens at the airport, and then there's a big rippling effect of who's responsible for it. And the FAA doesn't want to be in that position to deal with that most of the time. I used to be the manager at Sun Valley, Haley Airport, and that is very similar to what you have here at this airport. It's engulfed by residential area around the airport. And that airport had a situation where the users of the airport are very high-profile individuals. They had corporate jets coming in there, plus it also did air carrier. They have Horizon and also SkyWest. And so, but it's in the middle of the town, and they've tried numerous studies to try and relocate that airport, and they haven't been able to come up with anything at all with that. So looking here in Kalispell, those are factors that you have to really consider that you go to the FAA and say, hey, can you do a waiver for us? And the chances of them doing a waiver are nowadays is really far and in between. Just right out the gate, I can tell you that right now. I'm not trying to be the guy who say you can't do it. There's always that possibility, just like winning the lottery tonight, so.
What was Haley, Idaho's solution then?
They're just staying status. They've expanded, in the sense of T-hangar development and so on that. They also got a private tower put in there, but it's status. It's just.
Currently compliant.
Yes, yes.
Did they have an alternative airport fairly close?
No, the sites that we're looking at were about 25 miles to the south, kind of in between Twin Falls and the airport itself.
That'd be a brand new airport.
Yes.
But not having an existing one fairly
No,
close.
no.
I don't want to stifle conversation, but we are trying to, on the TV, it's going to be blank space.
Again, a couple of questions, and I'm digging back in my memory, but it seems like the city of Kalispell has already taken some funding, federal funding, and is it no, they haven't taken, okay. So I'll ask my question, somebody can answer it. And it was my understanding that if they didn't go forward with the airport, they had to pay some of that funding back for some of the studies that were done. So that's one question. And then the second one is if you can explain a little bit more about how an airport authority works and what really the difference between privatization and an airport authority is.
First question is, no, the city, to my knowledge, has not taken any funding from FAA and would not have to pay anything back.
Maybe the confusion was there was eligible reimbursements that could have happened if they received FAA money, but they did not receive the money. So some of the costs incurred to date would have been reimbursed. That didn't happen, so no FAA monies came here.
You have on top of your head the amount?
No, I do not. I wasn't prepared for that.
Again, and if you look at page 36 in the report, or on that board over there, if you look at the airport authority, think about the city. Kalispell runs a city. An airport is a pretty specific use. It has been running that general aviation airport for quite some time, but airport authorities provide a focused leadership. It insulates elected officials, basically, so it's a board that operates. It has a business focus to it, very specific, laser-targeted business focus to the airport. Maybe the advantages of a municipality, it has access to other city resources, so there's crossover opportunities, mowing, other maintenance opportunities that could be there, so that may be the ability to do it. Municipalities can issue bonds. The money may not be available to support an airport if as part of disadvantages for the airport authority. And there's several other items there, but I think the number one issue is that airport authorities are specifically set up to operate airports. Cities are not set up to strictly operate an airport, and airport has very specific operations. You also ask about private versus what's the difference between privatization. And I think it's just that. It's privatizing. It's a private group of individuals, or it's an LLC or some form of a private ownership structure that would then operate the airport. It might be a group of aviation enthusiasts. It might be a group of business owners that choose to locate their businesses there. They operate, but they also have to operate in accordance with FAA guidelines You can't just go out and fly and do things without, according to your own whims. You do have to follow certain structures. So,
Would the city still retain ownership of the land?
as I said, in this case, there are so many different levels of potentials that could occur if it were privatized. I laid out a condition that the city may choose to go forward and say, okay, let's see if there is a private interest out there that want to operate this, own and operate this, and maybe they take over the responsibility of the existing leases. It gets the city out of that major buyout. The private group then figures out how to operate and maintain the airport on its own. But the city may put a reversionary clause on the issuance of that, where if they didn't meet certain number of restrictions, then there was a reversionary back to the city. Any number of things could happen in that request for proposal. Yes,
Wayne, at the beginning, at the outset, you mentioned you found a general consensus of support for keeping the airport. Could you explain how many people were surveyed? Was that active surveying? Was it straw poll? Was it folks who just kind of generally said, sure?
I'll let Stephanie answer that one.
Well, the media outreach included our stakeholder group meetings, our survey component that was on our website, and then the open houses that we conducted in the spring of 2015. And, generally we had over 100 responses to random questions asked about keeping the airport as is, closing the airport, or re-engaging the FAA. And people answered, it was random, but the general consensus was keep the airport. There wasn't an overwhelming desire to close the airport. They didn't want it to become a huge tax burden for the city, but we did not hear that closing the airport was a preferred option.
Yeah, I would point out we did not issue a statistically valid survey as a part of this structure.
When we went through this in 2012, I was on a list of, to keep informed, and I guess I was off the list because this is the first meeting I've been able to understand and take place. So I wasn't on the survey. The other thing is I'm wondering if the city has liability insurance that covers just the airport, or are they on a blanket thing, and how much liability? Because maybe an authority would shift that liability, or maybe not. Maybe the city would maintain liability, or if the city, has it ever been a study of saying what is our liability of operating an airport of that kind over the city and so forth?
Not that I know of. I don't believe. I'm sure that it's probably just part of your general insurance policy, but I do not know of any of the studies that we've reviewed that specifically looked at liability. I can tell you that we, as well as our consulting firm, have continued to have a little concern over the condition of the taxiways.
The other question I might have is on these authorities, they're more business-oriented, is there business plans or some kind of models that we could look at to see if profitability for a town our size that would be, so we could compare?
Today with the internet, I'm sure there's probably 20 of them sitting out there, but I have not tried to go forward and look at what a business plan might be. I think our task was to try and lay out and from to use a bad joke at the 30,000 foot level, so to speak. We looked at a lot of the specifics as far as dollars, but the idea of privatizing, again, going back to Mary's question and my response, there are so many things that you could put into a request for proposal. I myself have been involved with many requests for proposals for privatizations, everything from privatizing landfill operations to making private development on state grounds for hotels. There's just so many things that you can do, but the overall concept would be letting the private sector make a decision as to what the real value of that particular property might be operated as an airport.
We could probably go for a long time. If there's one or two more comments or questions, if you'd like to make those now, and then I think Steph's going to come up and pretty much wrap up and tell you how you can stay engaged in the process, how you can get comments into the system.
I'm just kind of curious how you could have that huge sewer plant right above that and not even mention it in these plans. I mean, do we really want an amphitheater into the direct wind flow of a sewer plant? And that plant's going to be expanding.
I don't know. I think you're not going to move it. The location.
I know, how many investors are you going to get for all this retail on top of a sewer plant? I live there. I can tell you the airflow is usually towards the east or the southeast. So I don't get to smell it much. I'm just north. But you take a drive around the other side of that sewer plant, and it makes you want to leave real quick.
Yeah. Well, I live just to the east of a dairy farm, and I love where I live. At the end of the day, I understand what you're saying, but that piece of infrastructure is still there. I don't know, again, what the value of is, the value of the land being changed. We've identified a $25,000 an acre blanket number, but also put the caveat forward that whatever's done will have to have a viable appraisal done. And again, like much of what we've been saying, the private sector will sell you what the value is.
Another thing, like I say, I am in aviation, so of course I'm pro-airport, but I happen to be on a project this weekend. Yesterday I was in Truckee, Tahoe, California, and the day before that I was in Auburn, California, just on the other side of the Sierras. And I talked to the manager over there, and they don't even think twice about funding their airport. It's FAA funded. There's at least 20 corporations around that airport. There's technical businesses, there's a brewery. I mean, there's a lot of, real jobs for real people that build the tax base. And they don't even argue about airport funding over there. It's like, that's what we got to do. It's just like, how do you determine how much money an airport brings you? If you get, do you want 8 or 10 corporations that provide real jobs, or do you want a bunch of retail at $9 an hour? I mean, you got to consider all that when you're figuring an airport budget, because the airport does just as much as the highways do.
I guess this is a soapbox. I'm not disagreeing with that, and if you read this report, we've identified a lot of that. Unfortunately, the format of tonight, we could sit here all night and dive into the numbers and the details of this. I don't disagree with you one bit that airport authorities across the nation and airports across the nation, are economic development catalysts. If you look at Helena, they make money off their development that's ancillary to the airport. They don't make money.
So I guess one of my questions is, when you say, well, if we spend this much of the airport and this is how much revenue it generates, you don't really know how much revenue it generates. Is that correct?
There has been studies out there, and widely quoted and widely discounted on the value of this particular airport. That's well beyond the scope of this particular study to go and do that. And we elected not to quote that number that's been out there. I think it's safe to say that there is value in having that. There's economic value. I don't think we discount that at all. But at the same time, I think what you do see is that there are direct costs to the city to operate the airport.
I think another thing on this referendum, I don't think the public understood that FAA funding, every taxpayer doesn't pay for that. As a rule, FAA funding comes from a tax on aviation fuel. If you don't fly, you're not paying for it. If you buy an airline ticket, you're paying for it, but then you're flying. So I don't think a lot of people understood that.
You want to do one more question? John over here. John?
I'd follow up with regard to the impact of technologies with a bright spot. One company here in the valley, Synergy Aircraft, has incubated a multi-million-dollar investment in Kalispell already. 12 new jobs were created in 2015. Many dozens of new jobs will be created in 2016. They intend to bring a $40 million investment in the location of their enterprise at Kalispell City Airport. And all of this speaks to something that is easily overlooked. It's the elephant in the room. Airports actually get the blame for what all the antique old little airplanes do. We don't drive 40-year-old cars. We don't like 40-year-old cars except to collect them and polish them up, which is what we do with our airplanes too, by the way. But when quiet and roomy and fuel-efficient aircraft are the norm, and they're affordable, and they're smart planes, semi-autonomous, remote co-pilot, nodes on the internet that know where the traffic's at, it will be possible for people to wake up and realize we never solved the way for people to travel in small groups, on demand, over regional distances. So if a traffic accident happens in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and your family's involved, you've got a $6,800 bill to take your family from Glacier Park Airport to Denver and then get to Rock Springs. You have a similar cost if you own a private jet. The other alternative is to drive for 10 hours each way, but if you have an on-demand system, you could get there for $120 worth of diesel. This is the solution that is coming. I attended a NASA and FAA joint planning road mapping session in Kansas City in October, wherein the powers that be are fully aware that the technology has already arrived on the software side and on the algorithmic side of things. But what we're waiting for is the opportunity to make low-cost mass-market aircraft available, and that will take quite a long time to do. When we do so, though, we'll find out that our forefathers knew that 19,000 local airports were a really smart idea, because someday we would be able to fly on demand.
Thank you all for coming.